In Genshin Impact, while most playable characters have a specific role in teams, if you're insane enough, you can make anyone a main DPS. Well, almost anyone. When Genshin Impact released Inazuma in 2.0 and introduced us to Kokomi, there was palpable excitement. What team role would be fitting for the leader of the resistance force in Inazuma, the divine priestess and supreme leader of Watatsumi Island? And then her kit was announced. Not only was she not a DPS, but she was the first and only character to have a base crit rate in the negatives. So of course, because I love suffering, I decided to see if being able to crit is really necessary to Genshin Impact, and challenged the game with only Kokomi. Unfortunately, this challenge was a nightmare from the start, which I feel like should have been my first warning sign that this was going to be an uphill battle. I ended up going into soft pity before losing my 50-50 to Chiori. In any other situation, I'd be fine with this because I could just make a solo Chiori run, but I already got Chiori on a different account for that solo run. In my attempts to get Kokomi, I also got Yaemiko, Kazuha, and Ito on solo accounts. After an uncomfortable amount of money spent, I was at the point that it felt like it would be more beneficial to just move on to a different challenge. Which leads us to this challenge's sponsor. This challenge is sponsored by my friend Violet. She bought crystals for me so I would get Kokomi on this account. So everyone say thank you to Violet.
I am Sangonomiya Kokomi, the divine priestess of Watatsumi Island. My journey with you will be an opportunity to unwind. To survey beyond our borders. Don't worry, I have left behind ample directives in my absence and have also completed the island's projected development plans. Departing for a brief period will be of little consequence.
While my lovely friend Violet helped me make this challenge possible, today's video is sponsored by Sakura Co. Sakura Co is a monthly Japanese artisan snack box that has a focus on supporting and preserving Japanese culture with treats from local snack makers across Japan. With the Sakura Co, you can experience Japan from the comfort of your home thanks to the meticulously curated boxes containing both traditional and seasonal snacks like mochi, dorayaki, manju, and more. Each month's box also includes authentic Japanese teas and a piece of traditional Japanese tableware to help bring some Japanese tradition to your home. For the month of August, Sakura Co brings us to Okinawa with the theme Journey to Okinawa. Okinawa Prefecture consists of 3 main island groups: the Okinawa Islands, the Sakishima Islands, and the Daitu Islands. These islands are rich with history, culture, and beautiful natural landscape, and Sakura Co gives you a taste, both literally and figuratively, with this box. Included in each box is a cultural guide booklet. This booklet shares details and tips for best enjoyment of the snacks, as well as allergen information, so those with food allergies or sensitivities can feel comfortable enjoying worry-free. Beyond details and allergen information for the snacks, the cultural guide booklet is a great way to learn about the history and traditions from Okinawa, as well as learn all about some of the snack makers whose treats are included in the boxes. Among the snacks included in this month's box is this chinsuko, a traditional Okinawan sweet made with simple ingredients baked to a crisp, a perfectly mild flavor that can help balance some of the sweet and savory in this box. Speaking of sweet, the mango agar candy was perfectly sweet and juicy, without being the kind of sweet that hurts your teeth. The flavor was just like biting into a mango, and I will be honest and admit that this was the first snack gone after I was done filming. Can you blame me? Another snack that I absolutely loved was the Okinawa almond caramel cookie. Unlike the mango agar candy with a chewy texture, this treat closely resembles a tart with a crunchy texture. The salty almonds balance perfectly with the sweet caramel, and I was definitely wishing for more, which ended up being a common theme in this box. Still focusing in on the sweet treats, the Okinawa baked chocolate was probably my favorite snack in the entire box. The texture was so soft, but I was mostly shocked by how delicious the chocolate was. The taste reminded me more of fudge than, say, a chocolate bar, and so it was easy to eat without feeling overly creamy or sweet. This box didn't only have sweet snacks though. Mixing into the sweet and salty were the Kokuto cinnamon peanuts. Even the packaging says it would pair perfectly with a beer, so if you're of age, you know what to do. Even without that though, the peanuts were a great snack and balanced the sweets of the rest of the box. But peanuts are a little messy to include on a plate. Well, it's a good thing this month's included tableware was a bowl. This month's box includes one of 2 types of handmade ceramics directly from the Gifu Prefecture, either a teacup or a gorgeous bowl like I got. I was genuinely so excited when I saw this in my box. I will absolutely be using this for snacks all the time. All these treats pair perfectly with this month's included tea, sanpin tea. Sanpin tea, also known as jasmine tea, has been a staple in Okinawa for centuries, so it's only right to include it with this box. If you're concerned about it being too hot out for tea, worry not, because this tea can also be brewed over ice. Whether you're stuck in bed with a cold like I was or trying to cool off after a long day, you'll be able to enjoy this tea and these snacks. Follow the link in the description and use the code REN to get $5 off your first order. Make sure you order by August 15th if you want to get your hands on this box. My code also works with Yume Twins, which has anime and otaku goodies, which you can see me unbox in Skirk only, No Make No Life, which contains Korean and Japanese cosmetics and skincare, and of course Tokyo Treat, which has monthly Japanese snack boxes that you can see me unbox in some previous videos. Thank you so much to Sakura Co for sponsoring today's video, and now let's see if we we can beat Genshin Impact with only Kokomi. The rules for this challenge are the same as always. I can only use Kokomi, but I can use other characters if necessary to move forward the Archon quest. All catalysts are allowed, but if I end up getting her signature weapon, I can't use it until after Inazuma. Additionally, I cannot play in co-op. Otherwise, anything goes. Before we start this challenge, I must make a disclaimer. I know Killer Kokomi has been working on this challenge on livestream. I also know he's been getting back into content creation after taking a break. He also talked about doing this challenge before I even started my channel. I'm not trying to one-up him or steal his idea. I personally have had Kokomi on my main team since she released, and I've started challenge accounts with the other characters from my main team. Mostly. Hoyoverse, please rerun Albedo and not cry. I'm begging you. Plus, he has also expressed the same mindset that I have with challenge runs. There's a finite amount of playable characters, obviously challenges will overlap, but every person's challenge run is going to be different, so it shouldn't be a problem for multiple people to do the same challenge. I will be watching his full Kokomi only video when it releases, but for now, here is my version of the challenge. Now, this pre-challenge has been long enough, so let's get into it.
There's the blacksmith!
And we won't be seeing much of him in this video. The challenge starts the same as always, with Amber's domain. If you've watched any of my solo challenges, you already know that I don't bother with a skip in this domain. I know it's possible to do, but I decided to preserve my sanity for later in this challenge, because this challenge definitely tested my mental strength. Up next is Kaya's domain, and I know that this is a cryo character's domain and all, so it makes sense that these pyro mechanisms stop functioning when you use cryo on them. But you would think it would also do that with hydro, since, well, water beats fire. But hey, what do I know? Instead, we just jump over them, ignore the hydro slimes, and head to the second level so we can show off Kokomi's burst. Yes, I waited for this moment just to use her burst. Thanks to that, we finish Kaya's domain and make our way to visit Lisa. I was admittedly a bit nervous because, again, short female model, but somehow I was able to find the platform over on the side and get to the other side on my first attempt. Am I getting better at this? Probably not. I think I just got lucky, and it was likely the only time in this challenge that I did. With the 3 domains complete, we unlock the full map, except, you know, the one place we need for Kokomi, and finish Act 1, meaning it's time to grind to AR10 while discussing the pros and cons of Kokomi, both in general and from a solo challenge perspective. I'm going to start with the pros for Kokomi in general, because the pros for a solo run run out pretty quickly. Now, my flex is I have been a Kokomi defender since day 1. Even when everyone was dunking on her, saying she was the worst character or a must skip, I pulled for her immediately on her release. My motto has truly always been reject the meta, embrace pastels. All that to say, even though Kokomi had to prove her worth to a majority of Genshin's player base, she has grown to become a huge asset to team comps, especially with the release of Farina as well as the whole of Dendro. Beyond being an amazing healer and the OG for walking on water, Kokomi is one of the best for off-field hydro application. This was big back in Inazuma with the taser options, but Dendro's need for hydro application, especially with Nilou's release, exploded her usage. With Farina's release and her team-wide HP drain, Kokomi's burst became an equally important asset with her full team healing. Kokomi at release was more or less treated as a 5-star Barbara, but in true military nature, she lost the early battles to win the long-term war. Now let's focus on her pros for a solo run. Kokomi is essentially a tank. Keep her healing up, and she'll probably never die. Well, this is a Ren challenge run, so I guess we'll see how I manage. While her HP scaling primarily is for her healing, it does help her burst damage be more powerful as well, and at least I don't need to worry about getting a decent crit ratio. However, in terms of solo run pros, that's pretty much it. I love Kokomi, she's one of my favorite Genshin characters, but I genuinely cannot think of any other pros for a solo run. For the first solo run con, she's a Hydro Catalyst, so she can't mine, she can't do damage to Hydro Abyss Heralds or Hydro Slimes, and she can barely do damage to Cryo enemies. And unfortunately, Genshin has Hydro and Cryo enemies in every single Archon quest. She is essentially completely reliant on either getting the Eye of Perception or the Skyward Atlas, but I don't have much expectation for that. And before anyone says, oh, what about the weapon? No. Do I look like I'm beating that thing? Or these, for that matter? And even if by some miracle I did, I still can't mine. Hydro isn't particularly useful in early game like Anemo and Pyro are. It's obviously not as useless as, say, Dendro in early game, but it's close. Kokomi, being from Inazuma, has no ability to get her Ascension materials outside of Inazuma. I had hoped that they would fix this when they released a standard character from Inazuma, but well, I guess that's asking too much. Additionally, the only other character that uses Sango Pearls, Goro, was not up on the banner during this half of the run. And since she ran on the Chronicled Wish banner, she doesn't have a trial run to let you claim level up materials. Because of that, she is stuck at level 20 until we can complete Rito. If you watched Mizuki only, you might be quickly realizing where the problem lies. But that's not all, because yes, it does in fact get worse. Once she can get to Inazuma and collect the pearls, she'll be able to ascend once, and never ascend again. She will be stuck at level 40 permanently in this challenge. challenge. Her boss, the Hydrohypostasis, is unbeatable with only a Hydrocatalyst, even with the Eye of Perception. Trust me, I tried, but we'll get to that later. Additionally, as I've mentioned already, she's a short female model, which beyond its problems with skipping domains, means she has the second slowest movement speed, only behind the child models. This challenge was a slow journey in every aspect. Thanks to the missions in the Adventurer's Handbook and the Morale lines being mostly pyro enemies, we hit AR10. Unfortunately, the free 10 pool does not get us the Eye of Perception, but it's fine. It's rated up on Weapons Banner, so I'm sure once we start getting the free wishes from completing Archon quests, we'll get it no problem. Right? Back in Mondstadt, we start Act 2. Unlike with Animo Catalyst challenges like Wanderer and Mizuki, we can at least damage the Eye of the Storm, albeit slowly, but honestly the core theme of this challenge was low death rate at the expense of every battle taking way more time than it should. So I've made it a habit when I come to the church for this part of the quest to make sure I talk to Victoria, because she'll give you a 4-star goblet, and in the past I've gotten pretty lucky with it being useful. Okay, yeah, I won't be using that. You know, this section of the quest will be incredibly entertaining to do with Varka only, which will definitely happen, I don't care. Moving on, we failed to get the Lyre before the Fatui. At least now Kokomi can get a better picture of how much the Fatui has been in our way throughout the story, which actually is ironic in hindsight considering she's always been on my main team with either Child or Wanderer. We enlist the help of Diluc and Jean to get the Lyre back and head to the Fatui hideout. At least there's a pyro enemy here. Thankfully, Kokomi really has no issues with the Fatui agent, but the ironic part is while my last challenge, Gaming only, was hard at the beginning and easier as it progressed, this one is gearing up to be the exact opposite. Maybe I'll save my tangents for later in the video since there will be a lot of time to kill within those fights. With the Lyre returned to Venti, it's now time to collect the 3 tiers.
We're still at it now.
Oh, you guys thought I would be productive in this video? Nah. Instead of following the Archon quest, I decided to complete more missions in the book. I could not tell you what past run was thinking. Maybe I was trying to farm Primo Gems to get the Eye of Perception. Maybe I was just tired of the Archon quest. Maybe I just enjoy making Present Ren suffer through her editing, who knows. Anyways, I bounced around the city looking for all the chests in strange places, unlocking my daily commissions, before finally deciding to be somewhat productive and go collect the tiers. However, instead of going first to the Ruin Guard, I decided to start in the Gorge. Unfortunately, being a menace to my future self and having the attack strength about equal to a slime, I took the long way around to avoid even being acknowledged by any of the enemies. Sure, why not? After, instead of going to the nearby domain for the second tier, I went all the way back to the ruins for the Ruin Hunter. Great. If you watched my last video, you're probably wondering how I'm feeling. Honestly, I feel better, I think. Whenever I get sick, I either recover no problem, or more often than not, feel better for a few days, and then rebound and get much sicker. Usually in that case, I start with like a sinus infection, and then it moves into my chest. I don't think that's a very scientific way to explain it, but well, you get it. I have no idea which one this will be, but for now I'm going to try and get work done while I feel good enough to. If anything, I'm still impressed with myself that I edited that last video while on cough medicine and having a limited ability to hear because of how plugged my head was. Though, to be fair, after I uploaded that video, I went and just stood in the shower for like a solid hour. I genuinely had the lights off because I was so sensitive to the light for some reason, and I just had a washcloth over my face as if I was waterboarding myself. Somehow though, it did feel nice. With the Ruin Guard defeated, we finally make our way back to the domain. This domain is primarily pyro enemies, so while it takes a while, it isn't much of a challenge. Also, truly nothing makes you appreciate being able to breathe through your nose like a head cold. That said, when your head is stuffed, you can't taste cough syrup. So when you start to feel better but still take the cough medicine, somehow it's so much worse. At the height of my cold, I had liquid Mucinex for the first time. Well, more specifically the CVS brand because it's $6 cheaper. And my immediate reaction was, that wasn't so bad. Unfortunately, as I started feeling a little better, I had my next dose, and that time I got the taste. Oh man, it was awful. It's also bright blue, which, I don't know, had me far more apprehensive towards it. And the worst part is you have to keep drinking it every couple of hours because you definitely feel it if you don't. Anyways, after getting my last video up, I felt much better about just rotting in bed. I rewatched that time I got reincarnated as a slime, and honestly, I forgot how much of a comfort show that is. I love it so much. With the 3 tiers obtained, we head to Star Snatch Cliff, fail to win over Dvalin, and finish Act 2. We have quite a ways to get to AR18, but more importantly, it's time to try and use my free pool to get the Eye of Perception. Okay. That's fine. Moving on to my daily commissions. Unfortunately, unlike with Gaming, when only one of the first round commissions was a problem, Kokomi had a 50% problem rate for them. The first problem came from the cryo slimes. While Kokomi can deal with the smaller ones, the large slime has a cryo shield that Hydro doesn't do much to. The second problem also came from shields. The good old wooden shields. Dendro shields, I guess. Regardless, Kokomi can't light them on fire, so she just has to try and get around the shields and hope for the best. Eventually, though, we make it through her daily commissions, get enough Primo Gems for another wish, and still no Eye of Perception. Okay, we'll circle back to this tomorrow. A new day arrives, meaning a new set of daily commissions. Wow, I'm honestly so glad all of my solo accounts seem to be getting the Ella Musk commission set, while Archons Only still needs it. That, along with the Anna the Adventurer achievements, are all I need in Mondstadt, and still nothing. After finishing the daily commissions, we reach AR 15, which usually is a great thing, but again, I still can't level up Kokomi. However, I found out that the same shop in Sumeru that I get dandelions for from the glory commissions on non-animo accounts also sells Sango pearls. Unfortunately, there's an asterisk there, but I didn't know that yet. Admittedly, I didn't remember ever seeing it at the store, and in the back of my mind, I knew most of these shops didn't have Inazuma products until the Sakura decree is repealed after Raiden Act 2. But Google said it was there, and Google definitely never lies, right? Instead of logging into literally any other account to go check, I decided to take the walk. After all, I love making editing me suffer, and I really had nothing else to do. At least every waypoint I unlock will give me experience points, and it's not like I can go fight bosses. Surprising nobody, myself included, the shop doesn't sell them. So what did I gain from my journey? Not much. Still stuck at AR 15, still don't have the Eye of Perception. I ended up returning to Mondstadt to start Amber and Kaya's story quests, which helped me reach AR 16. I also made my way to Liyue Harbor, completed a quest for Catherine, and still don't get the Eye of Perception. You know, in other challenges, I've gotten it super quickly despite either pulling on Standard Banner or pulling on Weapons Banner when it's not rated up, so I guess it figures that now when it's finally rated up, I can't get it. Returning to Mondstadt, I work on some missions in the book, give Kokomi an absolutely god-tier build, as you can see, and eventually hit AR 18. Time to return to the Dawn Winery to start Act 3. Unfortunately, the first enemy we face in Act 3 is a Hydro Abyss Mage. Even worse, it's raining, and there's a Cryo Hilly Trail shooter among the enemies too. So we take care of him first, before pushing the Hydro Mage to the Cryo Flowers. Listen, I never said I was perfectly healed. Luckily, this is the worst enemy of Act 3, which is good, because it gets much worse later. There's 2 mandatory fights after the Hydro Abyss Mage before we can fight Dvalin. The first being the Shield Meter Trail and Friends, which went about as well as you can expect. The second fight, thankfully, is a Pyro Abyss Mage. While Kokomi can't do much proper damage, at least she isn't a Pyro character. Finally, it's time to take on Dvalin. At least this probably won't be as bad as with Mizuki. Okay, so if you watched one of my last videos, you would know I talked about Uma Musume, and how I said I wouldn't download it because I didn't have the time nor money for another gacha game. Well, let me put on my clown nose, honk honk, because look what I downloaded. Though if you watched my last video, you already know that. I've more or less gone into it completely blind and just doing whatever for fun and trying to help my best girl win. And she did in fact win a D1 race on her first attempt. No big deal. But I'm admittedly probably playing it completely wrong. That said, I was absolutely right about not having time for a new game because I definitely spent way too much time playing when I was supposed to be working on this video. Oops. Even while writing this script and recording this voiceover, I was resisting the urge to play. Maybe I need to work on time management. Now, this entire script has been written prior to my playing of the new 5.8 update, and I will talk about the update in a future video, but for now, oh man, I am so excited for the new update and the new quest. I love how much more we're learning about Venti lately, and while I'm scared they might try to do a 180 of, oh, Venti's actually bad, there is nothing that could make me hate him. I'm a Wanderer main, what do you expect? On the topic, I ran this idea by my Discord, and it seemed to get a positive reaction, so maybe come 6.0, I might start making side videos where I kind of recap the quests as they release. I get a lot of comments praising when I recap quests for like Arlecchino only, both from people who don't actively play anymore, and people who play but didn't fully understand the quest. So I feel like that could be a fun thing. Obviously, I won't go into depth on lore because, well, that's a little too big-brained for me. Trust me, you don't want me as a lore explainer. Ooh, I can call it Ren Recaps. Yeah, I think I'll do that. That's cute. We managed to defeat Dvalin in only 3 rounds, which kind of shocked me. So after returning the Holy Lyre to Barbara and meeting someone who definitely won't have a direct impact on Watatsumi Island's future, we complete the Mondstadt Archon quest. So what's next? Well, not getting the Eye of Perception. Instead, we returned the next day to Venti still standing under the tree, which is weird because I thought they disappear after server reset, but whatever, and go start our daily commissions. That, for whatever reason, were in Liyue. Figures. During our daily commissions, we reach AR 20, I get not the Eye of Perception, and then I logged out for a bit and took a break. When I logged back in, wait, that's not right. Why are we at AR 23? When did I finish Liyue Act 1? At the same time as I was recording Kokomi, I was going through a bit of a chronic health hiccup, which for me causes a lot of brain fog. For whatever reason, I also chose that time to transfer all of my files to a different hard drive because Premiere Pro has essentially stopped functioning on my main PC, and now all of my editing has to occur on my MacBook. Unfortunately, somewhere in there, a single clip fell through the cracks and corrupted. Unfortunately, that clip was the literal 3 hours of farming to AR 23, including Amber's story quest and Act 1 of the Liyue Archon quest. Yeah. So here's a reenactment of what I assume happened, because this was all like 2 months ago, which may as well have been a year ago with my brain's memory bank. We threw some bubbles at treasure hoarders, chased Raptor into his domain. Kokomi was able to defeat the hilly churls on this ledge, but not the hilly churls up here, so I called in Amber for reinforcements. We did manage to defeat Raptor, meaning we got our gliding license and finished Amber's story quest. Eventually, we hit AR 23, watched Rex Lapis die, met the other half of my main team's Hydro Resonance from Inazuma to Natlan, and got sent to meet the Adepti. From there, we threw bubbles at the Melolith until they gave up, borrowed help from, I don't know, Sayu maybe, to break the Amber, however, did a super amazing job at skipping Cloud Retainer's domain and had what I imagined to be a very bad time against the Ruin Hunter, which helped us wrap up Act 1, bringing us to our current footage. And scene. Oh, and I still didn't get the eye perception. Moving back to the challenge with actual footage, I started Diluc's story quest for some experience points. Emphasis on started because I sure didn't finish it, before deciding to go to the Spiral Abyss for some reason. I'm assuming it was to farm Priwa gems for the eye perception, but man, what did I expect? I had no issues with floor 1, but floor 2 is a lot less forgiving, especially for a solo Hydro character. However, the buff on the Abyss is that anytime you use an elemental skill, it lets out a physical damage charge attack, which was the literal only way I was doing any damage. To be fair, that's basically the same as the eye perception. Additionally, floor 2 chamber 2 isn't timed, it's just keeping enemies away from the monolith, and somehow I managed to get 3 stars. Chamber 3 didn't have the benefit of no time limit though, but it sure did stick with the Hydro enemies. However, honestly, I'm as shocked as you all are. Still didn't get the eye perception though. The next day I got the commission with Glory, so I was at least thankful I had made the trip earlier in the video to that shop in Sumeru. After finishing my daily commissions, I ended up doing a bunch of exploration to level up, since, well, I didn't want to try to deal with Razor's story quest yet. I also decided to do the only one-off domain that I could actually unlock. Level 20 Kokomi versus 2 level 45 Pyro Abyss mages and a level 45 Stonehide Lodge Churl. How do you think it went? Surprisingly well. Like I mentioned in the pros and cons, Kokomi is essentially a tank. So long as the battle isn't timed and you can avoid getting one-shotted, she's pretty unstoppable. However,
Is also a test of stamina.
eventually I went back to my old reliable, the Liyue weapons domain, which finally got us to AR25. Avoiding the Ascension domain, it's time to return to Liyue. And don't worry, I have this footage. Unfortunately, as we all know, Liyue Act 2 is about as eventful as watching paint dry. We meet Zhongli, return to Mondstadt, and find out Kokomi's Hydro is only lukewarm, so we need Amber's help to boil the rocks. Kokomi can at least defeat the enemies that show up, so there's that. We run a bunch of errands before it's time for Madame Ping's teapot. If you watched Skirk only, you know why this is a problem. The first obstacle is the large Geo Slime, with an equally large Geo Shield.
Pull the lever, Crunk.
Okay, why couldn't you have done that at the beginning? The second obstacle is the sheer amount of Hydro Slimes, and the fact that I still don't have the Eye of Perception. This gives me 2 options. Option 1 is to hope I can cause an elemental reaction with the other slimes, or use these Pyro Flower Bomb things. Both options worked, for a little while. Unfortunately, there was 1 slime left, and the last Flower Bomb wasn't enough to kill it. So you're probably thinking there's nothing I can do here, right? Wrong. There is one singular thing that I can do. Though honestly, it would probably have been faster if I abandoned the domain and tried again. See this little guy over here? Well, with this little guy, when you get close enough, it will shoot at you. And those shots do physical damage. So I did this. Yes, I'm serious. Yes, it did take me a while.
1 hour later. Two hours later. 3 hours later.
Can you move it along? I'm all out of time cards.
However, we succeeded, and for the first time in any of these challenges, or ever in my life, I have been thankful for the creature that was behind this cover that shall not be named. With the cleansing bell, we run some more errands before heading up to the ballista to defeat some treasure hoarders, having dinner with Zhongli, and wrapping up Act 2. Unfortunately, to start Act 3, we have to do the Ascension domain, meaning a higher word level, and still a level 20 Kokomi. Oh, and no, I still haven't gotten the Eye Perception. I even bought crystals. Still nothing. Against my better judgment, I decided to go and get the Ascension domain out of the way first. After all, it's not like the challenge is going to get magically less difficult if I put it off anymore. So I get asked a lot, both in my comments and on my Discord, about how I can survive playing the same Archon quest stories over and over again. And honestly, playing the quests isn't even the hard part. I just turn my brain off and watch something else usually. The problem lies in finding creative ways to talk about the same Archon quest story multiple different times while still making it entertaining. I can't imagine those of you who watch all of my challenges want to hear me just copy and paste describing these quests. Or I guess maybe it's possible you do, but that feels unlikely. So 9 times out of 10, the biggest struggle I have with the videos is my script. Once the script is written, it's pretty straightforward for me to record the voiceover and then edit everything. Actually, to be fair, there is a problem sometimes when I do the Archon quests during like Sumeru and Fontaine, since so much of the quest is just dialogue and not much interaction. I have more than once fallen asleep at my desk. Oops. Also, going back to me being sick, does anyone else get this weird energy rebound after they start feeling better? I get so insanely antsy, I end up pacing around trying to find things to do. The problem is when this happens, I'm still not at 100%, so I end up overexerting myself, and then back to bed I go. I decided to compromise by working on finishing this video up because it distracts my brain, but also isn't physically taxing. It was that, or cleaning my entire apartment, which I have done before after recovering from illness, but that's neither here nor there. I guess that's at least the good thing about working mostly on my computer, is being able to take it slow when I'm recovering. But also, it kind of makes me feel like I need to work when I don't have energy, because why am I wasting time when I could be productive? You know? Oh well. With the Ascension domain complete, we're now left to try and work our way to Air 28, and I still didn't get the Eye of Perception. The primary reason I need the Eye of Perception is that in order to do the Dainsleif quest, I need to complete Razor Story Quest, and the first enemy in Razor Story Quest, you guessed it, is Hydro Slimes. Originally, there were 2 small Hydro Slimes and 1 big slime, but during the period that I lost the footage for, I did try doing this. I successfully defeated the small slimes, but the large slime kept getting too far from the spawn point and returning, which also meant resetting its HP. I decided to try again and see if I could avoid that while still getting it over to the pool with the cryo flowers. Now, I want you all to go ahead and take a guess on how long this took. Go ahead, comment it. You can edit your comment with your reaction afterwards. Surprisingly, this wasn't the longest battle I had in this challenge. Regardless, we managed to start Razor Story Quest, and at least Andreas is Cryo and Animo, so I can probably beat him. It'll be slow, but that's nothing new in this challenge. Honestly, I'd say that went faster than some of the other challenges I've done. Unfortunately, we still have quite a ways to go until AR 28. I ended up spending a ton of time running around and doing world quests around Mondstadt Liyue, which still didn't even get me to AR 27, so I gave up for the day. The next day, after doing my daily commissions, I decided to start Zhongling's story quest, which is rare considering I almost never do it. I figured that instead of struggling to fight higher level enemies with the ley lines, I can just do parts of the story quest since it lets you get a decent amount of experience points before the domains, which is usually where you can't progress with solo challenges. The sections we could do of the story quest got us just shy of AR 27, so I returned to Mondstadt and started Lisa's story quest. What can I say? When you can't do much fighting, you have to get creative. The first half of Lisa's story quest finally got us to AR 27, but unfortunately we still have a ways to go before AR 28 and we can begin Act 3 of Liyue. In most situations, I would just log off and do a few more days of daily commissions, but I was trying to do most of this challenge prior to Skirk's release on June 17th, and it was June 14th. So I spent a painfully long time sitting in my desk chair and ran around completing missions in the handbook, doing exploration, and pretty much anything I could think of to avoid fighting enemies. I'm sure we'll have a great time fighting Child. After 3 to 5 business weeks, we finally made it to AR 28, so now it's time to return to Liyue for Act 3. Before that though, in a hope to survive Child, I ran both Kanich and Raiden's trial runs, which gained me enough Primo Gems for exactly 1 wish. I truly wish I had my mic on at this moment. It took me until AR 28, but I finally have the Eye of Perception. At least now I can survive the Hydro Abyss Herald and Dainsleif's quests. While Kokomi can walk on water, she cannot walk on air, so we have to borrow Lynette to activate the pinwheel. We defeat a bunch of Millelith soldiers, meet Kuching, and I'm reminded how thankful I am for the Eye of Perception, because I forgot that this section of the quest requires us to beat another Hydro Slime. Is there a single chapter in any Archon quest that doesn't have a Hydro enemy? I guess maybe Liyue Act 1, but I don't remember what slimes are in Clavertainer's domain when you do it the normal way. Regardless, we make a slime snack for Ningguang and head up to the Jade Chamber. We're directed to go investigate the Fatui, and man, I did not want to fight these guys. Despite my best attempts, I ended up getting noticed through the wall by the Pyro Gunner. I guess sometimes he decides to do his job. Luckily, I was able to avoid being noticed by his pal, the tanky Hydro agent, so after a slow battle against an enemy weak to Hydro but double my level, I was able to investigate the sigils before going to find Zhongli. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning of my struggles. So I might be the last person to realize this, but the song the Traveler sings here is the song Barbara sings in her Idol. I knew they said it was a song from Mondstadt, and I don't know how it never occurred to me no matter how many times I played this scene. You want to know how I realized? I was playing Uma Musume and I started humming the song, and that's when it occurred to me to think, why do I remember Ether humming this too. Isn't it Barbara's? Oh. Anyways, I knew this battle would be a nightmare because anytime Kokomi uses her skill, she briefly applies wet to herself, which is enough time to be frozen by the flowers. So remember how earlier in the video I said Umumusume was consuming my spare brain power and begging to distract me from work? Yeah, well, it isn't the only thing. I mentioned it in the last main Archons only video, but I recently finally got into Alien Stage, and oh man, it's been all-consuming. Also, while trying to write this script, I ended up finding my way to the Patreon and reading the comics. Not to mention the fact my playlist of songs with Till has been on repeat so much that I fear K-pop demon hunters may manage to lose their top spot on my 2025 Spotify Wrapped. How humbling. Well, after struggling my way through that, it's finally time to go face off with the child. I don't know how I feel about this. On one hand, I personally thought it was hilarious since, as I've mentioned, Child and Kokomi were probably my longest staples on my team in Genshin. On the other hand, I knew this was not going to be like Mualani, where she beat him faster than anyone else. Well, at least until Skirk. For those unfamiliar, though I'm pretty sure most of you would be familiar with this, Child's Phase 1 has a 50% Hydro resistance, and his Phase 3 has a 70% Hydro resistance. And Kokomi doesn't do much damage, even with no resistance. I think the biggest challenge for this, challenge, besides, motivating myself to continue, was coming up with things to discuss because there are so many times where a fight takes a while and I had to decide what to show and what to skip, and then figuring out what to talk about to fill that time for the fights that I do show. So I decided to do the most logical thing and I asked you guys for topics to discuss. Some of you said that you would listen to me discuss paint dry, which is adorable, though I don't know how I would discuss that. One question that I really liked was this one by A Confused Berry. I won't answer every aspect of it at the moment because I'll probably circle back to it later, but the question is, how did you initially get into content creation, and did you plan to get into another career beforehand? If so, what would have been your desired job or position, and did you go to any amount of schooling for it? How has content creation treated you so far, and what are some personal pros and cons that you've experienced? I feel like for as long as I can remember, I wanted to do content creation to some degree or a creative field. I actually did go to college for social media marketing, but I dropped out after a year because I hated college. Don't do that. Don't drop out of college, kids. In terms of being a content creator, I feel insanely lucky because as much as it helps to make good and interesting content and know how to market yourself, you could make the best content ever seen, and if the YouTube algorithm doesn't pick it up, you're out of luck. I got really lucky and got picked up by the algorithm with my first video, but that brought on its own list of problems with being able to stay consistent. That said, I wouldn't change anything because I know how lucky I am. The biggest pros are obviously being able to make content people enjoy and seeing everyone excited when I upload videos. Plus, I get to make my own hours. But that also means I need to stay consistent. That's been my biggest struggle, honestly, juggling everything. I personally struggle immensely with executive dysfunction, so I'll go through cycles when I'm super motivated, working like 14 hours straight, and then I'll go through moments where it could be probably easier to ask me to spell every country on the map than convince me to work. I also feel like with content creation, it's very similar to an iceberg. What you see on the surface is only a piece of it, but maybe I make my life more difficult by taking on too many things. I think part of it also came from pretty rapid growth. After all, this video actually also marks the anniversary of reaching partner on YouTube. Almost, I'm a few days late. Which really only took me a couple of weeks, instead of the months or years that some people wait to get partnered. Besides the obvious of working on videos, making thumbnails, filming the challenges, etc., there's trying to work on community-related things like the Discord and behind-the-scenes stuff on Discord, brand-related stuff with merch or planning for future releases, and then of course bookkeeping. The IRS hates to see me coming. That said, I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm so thankful every day for being able to make content, and reading comments from you guys makes any sort of struggle seem minuscule. I have so many things planned for the future, and I can't wait to share them with you all. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, as long as Kokomi can avoid being one-shotted, it's pretty difficult for her to actually die. The real challenge is being able to spend upwards of 10 minutes on a single battle. However, we survived Child, meaning now it's time to go defend Liyue. Unfortunately, Kokomi gains absolutely nothing from the rain, so we just have to hope for the best. I genuinely love having this little guy here during this part of the quest, because it's so cute how he wears his shell as an umbrella. Truly one of my favorite companions Genshin has given us. I wonder if we'll get a little robot or something for this year's anniversary. The challenge with this, challenge wasn't even keeping Kokomi alive. It was keeping the Fatui away from the ballista. They obviously didn't view her as much of a threat, which admittedly isn't exactly wrong. In any case, we managed to save Liyue without losing any of the ballistas, and with that success, we wrap up the Liyue Archon quest, all while being stuck at level 20. Not bad, right? That said, believe it or not, but the worst is yet to come. For now, though, we start the Dainsleif quest. Like the rest of this challenge, the first part of this quest throws us into a fight with a Hydro Abyss Mage. Figures. After we investigate Wolvendom and fight a Pyro Abyss Mage, we have our first of many struggle fights that occur when Dainsleif is involved, and the reason I needed the Eye of Perception. Despite this quest being a half-hour long, there are 3 Hydro Abyss Mages to fight. At least they're level 37. In the past, I was able to bring these Hydro Abyss Mages over to the Electro Crystals to quickly break the shields. However, because nothing in this challenge went smoothly, the Abyss Mage kept flying back and respawning the shield. So I just had to rely on the Eye of Perception. And I don't want to talk about how long it took to break one shield, let alone to do it all again with another Hydro Abyss Mage, now supported by shield Metaturals. Finally though, we complete the Dainsleif quest. Now it's time to start We Will Be Reunited. This quest starts off unassuming enough. After all, we only have to defeat phase 1 of the Abyss Herald. Unfortunately, reuniting with Dainsleif means more awful enemies, starting with an unholy amount of Cryo Abyss Mages, which may as well be just as bad as the Hydro Abyss Mages. So I mentioned this on my community tab and on Discord, but with Honkai Star Rail announcing Dan Heng will have a third version, I will be doing a Dan Heng only. Star Rail is one of those games where it's really difficult to make challenge runs because there's a super limited amount of creative ways to play the game. I'd imagine there's already an only challenge for every path and probably for every element. I also knew that I wanted to do a challenge where I could incorporate Dan Heng because he has been my day one main, literally, and I generally just love him very much. Something about angsty wind boys with complicated backstories, I guess. Back when I first started filming Arlecchino only, I actually also filmed part of a Honkai Star Rail challenge, The Hunt only. Unfortunately, it was much harder than I anticipated, and I filmed all of it with the same bad quality setting that Arlecchino and Mondstadt was filmed with, so I gave up on it. But I also decided if I ever do a Honkai Star Rail challenge, it would have to be one specific circumstance. I told myself, and Twitter, that if Dan Heng got a third form, and mentally hoped it would be a Path of Preservation or Abundance form, I would do a Dan Heng only. It seemed impossible with only Dan Heng and Imbibitor Lune, but now my prayers have been answered, and Dan Heng has a Preservation form coming soon. So when that releases, I'll start Dan Heng only. I can probably survive with only Dan Heng in his Preservation form, but I'll hope Imbibitor Lune returns soon. On that post, I got some comments asking if I'll do the same with March. Maybe? I'll both see how Dan Heng goes, how well it does here on YouTube, and then also see how her kit looks. March technically only has her 2 forms, since her Hunt form is treated the same as the Trailblazer's path change, meaning it replaces her Preservation path. So it would be harder since I would only have 2 characters versus 3 with Dan Heng. Anyways, all that to say, I am very excited to start Dan Heng only. Fingers crossed it doesn't flop. After suffering through an unfortunate amount of Cryo Abyss enemies, it's finally time to see the Abyss Herald again, and this round means fighting both phases. While we do that, here's a lesson for everyone since I'm sure some of you are either back in school or preparing for it. The Chinese translation of the English word contradiction is Mao Dun, which directly translates to spear shield. This term dates back to a story in a book from 3rd century BC. In this story, a man attempts to sell both a spear that he claims can pierce all shields and a shield that he simultaneously claims cannot be pierced by any spear. When asked what would happen if he used the spear to strike the shield, he was unable to answer, leading to something called an irresistible force paradox. A similar story exists in Greek mythology, with the Timesian fox, a creature that can never be caught, versus the hunting hound Leylaps, who has never failed to hunt. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Well, we now have a third example of this paradox, also known as the unstoppable force paradox. Introducing Kokomi, a level 20 Hydro Catalyst only able to do minuscule damage every minute via her level 20 weapon, versus the Hydro Abyss Mage, with an immunity to Hydro. Kokomi, for what it's worth, is neither an unstoppable force nor an immovable object, but, well, she can't really die, so. The only unstoppable force here is me, having already posted that I was doing the challenge and too much pride to give it up. Now, pop quiz. How long do you think this fight took me? A, 5 minutes, B, 10 minutes, C, 15 minutes, or D, 20 minutes? The answer? You're all wrong. This fight took me so long that I stopped midway through to go eat dinner. I just opened the Paimon menu and left my game running while I walked away because I realized how late it was.
1 eternity later.
It took me 30 minutes. After all of that, I decided to reconnect with nature and take a nap before returning to the domain to wrap up the quest. At least we don't have to beat phase 2 again. Well, for now. With We Will Be Reunited complete, I've nearly reached the point of being able to finally level up Kokomi for, well, the only time in the challenge. I did a few rounds of the weapons material domain so I could reach AR30, and ran out of resin with less than 300 experience to go. Figures. So I ended up going to Sumeru to unlock some waypoints. May as well, right? Finally, we reached AR30. Time to make my way back to Liyue Harbor to finally begin the Inazuma prologue. Level 40 will be there soon. The Inazuma prologue quest only has a couple of fights. The first being a bunch of slimes for Kazuha that has a yellow level, which is tragic. The first round, the Pyro Slimes, wasn't much of a challenge. The challenge challenge, which I anticipated, was the second round with the Hydro Slime and a large Cryo Slime. The good news, though, is that with the Electro Slimes, I was able to trigger Super Conduct and Electro Charge enough to defeat the Cryo Slimes, leaving me still with the Hydro Slime. At least I switched to Eye Perception before starting this fight. He's literally still not watching. Why am I doing this if he's not going to watch? Or maybe he's just listening to the wind. Back on topic, we return to the fighting arena, find out the Masterless Vision was stolen, and again set out with Kazuha to find the culprit. While I'm usually the first person to fight this Fatui agent, with this account, I think I'll pass.
In which case, please stand back.
If only he was actually here to help us. I guess they didn't figure out that mechanic until Natlan. Bummer. You know, now that I think about it, I don't think Kokomi has died even once in this challenge. I know that's not exactly groundbreaking, but considering she's been, level 20, that's still impressive. Thanks to Faye the Flyer standing on a Cryo Flower, we're able to pretty easily defeat him, completing the Inazuma prologue. All that's left is to beat Rito, and then we can make a detour to Watatsumi Island. Act 1 of Inazuma, similar to Liyue Act 2, is a lot of dialogue. But after all of that, it's time for our last task at level 20. Unfortunately, it's probably the most difficult task to date. Not only are the enemies much higher level, but I have to prevent the transport balloon from being destroyed. And it's timed. We barely made it with Mizuki, so I'm apprehensive. Last time I did a battle type cutscene of this, I was told I missed an opportunity for a chat, so I will happily oblige. Maybe it's just me, but nothing convinces me to get my together quite like getting sick. I think it also helps that I'm leaving for a trip soon, but I just want to get my entire life together suddenly. Not that it was falling apart before, but, well, room for improvement. I need to really force myself into a stricter daily routine so I don't go insane, because I feel like as long as I do that, I can also produce content more regularly. Plus, like I mentioned earlier, I have so many things I need to start balancing better, so I feel like if I make stricter daily routines and mini schedules with my channel and content, I might feel a little bit less overwhelmed all the time. Or maybe being a content creator means a semi-constant state of overwhelm. Who knows? I think being sick and being absolutely bedridden also helped paint the picture to me of how fragile of a schedule I have. I can plan all of these videos, but my deadlines are so tight that if I get sick, I will miss a deadline, and that is obviously a problem. I think the hardest part will be writing these chatting segments for pre-recorded videos. Well, I'll figure that out too. Back to the challenge, it came down to the wire, but we survived. I wish I could express to you how thrilled I was about this. Instead of heading to Inazuma City to continue the art conquest, I found the nearest Wave Rider waypoint and jumped on Wave Rider to Watatsumi Island. It took a while, but finally, Kokomi was able to ascend and reach level 40. What an icon. And then I logged out for the day. Everything from AR26, so prior to Act 3 of Liyue, up until now, was done in one singular day. My brain was obviously fried. Refreshed and ready to continue our journey, we made our way to Komori Tea House to see Toma. After our mini tour of one location in the city, we trekked to the Kamisato estate. I don't know how the shogunate would feel about the leader of the resistance meeting with the Ashiro Commission, but, well, since Kokomi obviously knows the horrors of the Vision Hunt Decree, we need no convincing to join the movement, so we immediately meet Ayaka before agreeing to help Master Matsukatsu out of prison. What do you mean? That's exactly what happened. So, what's Ren watching? Ooh, that's actually a good tagline. Anyways, lately I've been pretty enthralled in Uma Musume. Oops. So I've been watching the anime. It's so cute, I can definitely understand why it catapulted the game into heavy success. I'm also watching this anime media recommended that's currently airing called, well, it's this. I'm not going to mispronounce it and embarrass myself. It's good so far. I'm back and forth on reading the manga because on one hand, I want to wait until the season finishes airing so I don't confuse myself, but on the other hand, the anime will be apparently airing for both summer and fall anime season, meaning if I want to wait until season 1 finishes airing, I have to wait until basically New Year's. And I don't know how much I want to wait for that. This now makes, well, quite a few series that I'm keeping up with airing weekly. The good news is literally every show I'm watching this season either airs on Saturday or Sunday, so I don't really have to try to keep track of when shows air. I can just watch multiple episodes in one sitting. Truly a win for me. I'm not really watching anything else. Like I mentioned before, I'm rewatching The Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, but I occasionally find myself in what I call binge slumps. I struggle to find anything to sit and watch that I haven't watched before. My brain just can't stay interested. I usually end up just doom scrolling on TikTok at that point, or watching random videos on YouTube. Sometimes I get really into cleaning videos for some reason. Actually, that's a lie. I've been watching those really tacky real short movie things they advertise on TikTok. Shout out to whoever keeps uploading them on Daily Motion. They're so bad, it's iconic. Going back to manga, I saw some recommendations on TikTok for a manga called Gokurakugai, and it looks really good, so I might start that too. Might as well, since like I've mentioned, almost all of my top manga ended. But Violet has also been sending me a lot of webtoons she's been reading, so I should probably start working on that list. Or maybe I'll hoard them all for the 16-hour flight to Korea in 2 months. Anywho, back to Umusume, it may be the first gacha game that I have ever played that I have good luck with. Or the odds are just much better in this than in other games. I haven't spent any money on it, but look at this. Mind you, I already had current gen by this point. Do I have much of an idea of how strategy works or how to play in a more meta way? No. But I enjoy racing my cute little horse girl, so that's what matters to me. After Grass Wonder passed, RIP, it truly cemented that I need to make a trip to Japan to meet the real Haru Urara and Gold Ship. Obviously. Free from jail, we wrap up Act 1, so now it's time for the story quests. With Ayaka's story quest, the primary enemies are Pyro, so it wasn't a huge problem. However, before I started Yoimiya's story quest, I decided I had done enough filming and opted to log off for a bit. More specifically, a month. I don't even know how this happened. I guess I just got sidetracked with Skirk and Archons only to realize that I never finished Inazuma. Oops. Stellar Reunion of Shame is now in the corner. We start Yoimiya's story quest, and I find out that apparently you can in fact cut down bushes with bubbles. Who would have guessed? The enemies for Yoimiya's story quest are a little more annoying than with Ayaka because they're just primarily physical damage, and there's a bunch of them. I think that's another area where Kokomi lacks a bit. Mobs of enemies tend to be a lot more difficult. Finally though, we finish Yoimiya's story quest and head back to Inazuma City to begin Act 2. Actually, that's a lie. Before that, I went to try and fight the Hydro Hypostasis, and it went exactly how you expect. In my defense, I saw people online saying maybe it was possible, but unfortunately, while Kokomi can in fact get it down to its second phase thing, she can't stop the little slimes from returning to heal. 30 minutes of my life wasted, but, well, it wasn't the first time, and it definitely won't be the last time. Starting Act 2 for real this time, we have our first face-off of A versus the Resistance, and resist we did. I know the more productive thing to do here is let her hit you and lower your HP to trigger the cutscene and move on, but we have our pride. So I decided to continue my mission of seeing how long we can last against her. Kokomi probably did the best of outlasting, which is to be expected, because she ended up triggering the cutscene with neither of them really taking much damage. I guess Raiden was getting tired. I can't blame her. Toma tells us about the Resistance, which, yeah, already pretty familiar with them, but we still opt to head off and go rendezvous with our allies. After a short trip, we find Tepe and our first of many yellow-leveled enemies after ascending. Despite that, though, they were really no problem, and so we were able to save Tepe, for now, and head to meet with Goro. Ah yes, a reunion of the Resistance leadership, as it should be.
Her Excellency is currently away from—
What do you mean? I'm literally right here. Unfortunately, it is now time for us to take on the archery demonstration. I knew Kokomi had a pretty good aim and distance with her fish, but I still didn't know if she could reach the top-level targets. Unfortunately, my first attempt proved to me that she could not. However, I then had an idea. I could use her skill. Worth a try, right? What? Where's Tepe? Actually, where's the little box for the archery demonstration? Did I break the archery demonstration? I ended up going and activating the teleport waypoint over here to try and see if teleporting away would fix it, but unfortunately all I could do was log off and then log back in. Maybe I'll just stick to Goro helping us. We move on to fight some of the Shogunate forces trying to break in before heading to the front lines for a fight of honor. To be fair, the leader of the Resistance versus Soldier B seems to be a little unfair. To the soldier, obviously. But hey, if Kujo-Sara wants to do that, then who am I to say no? I don't really understand how a sword can deflect bubbles, but whatever, I guess. We obviously have to disappear from the area so we can have our super cool reappearance for maximum aura farming, as the kids say, and after meeting ourselves, we wrap up Act 2. Also, I don't know if I'm insane, but I could have sworn that Kokomi was still here at the end of the quest. Is she not usually? Regardless, we opt to skip the return boat ride to Watatsumi Island with Tepe to begin Act 3, and instead decide to use good old reliable, the teleport waypoint. We meet with, ourselves, before heading to meet with the leadership of Swordfish 2. Honestly, I figured if I could beat these guys, I'd have no issue with the Delusion Factory. The final bosses— well, I didn't need to think about that yet. Highly dangerous. Well, that's unfortunate. We're just gonna see that everywhere going forward, huh? Actually, I don't know if I've even had to use healing food in this challenge. That's the real shocker. With the Ronin handled, we go and investigate the ruins, giving Lisa her regularly scheduled task for the challenge. Maybe one day I'll have a solo challenge with an Electro character. Luckily, the Electro Lodge Churl has a disadvantage with the Hydro, so Kokomi doesn't have much of a struggle against it. Okay, so I thought it was just a funny glitch with Skirk, but what happened here? Why does the delusion just awkwardly float now? Where did Goro's hand go? Regardless, we help out Tepe and leave him with Kokomi's skill, so he's definitely fine. No worries there. Finally, it's time for the Delusion Factory. So, in the spirit of recovering from illness and getting my life together like I mentioned earlier, I've started getting a better idea of my video schedule. I'm hoping to consistently get a video out per week because I've gotten much faster with editing and everything. Again, the thing that takes me the longest consistently is my script. However, with Notcry releasing, I might make future challenges have part 1 go from Mondstadt through Sumeru, which, to prevent the videos from being an hour long, would require a little more TLDR of the quests. Especially considering the pattern that Hoyoverse is taking with both Genshin and Star Rail, I have a feeling Notcry Nodcry's story quest is going to be hefty. Also, I will continue Arlecchino only once Nodcry fully releases, and I plan to make a video farming for artifacts for her as well, because I have a lot of resin. I think the hardest part with making videos in advance is when I do my chats like this. If the video takes too long to release, the topic ends up being outdated or not relevant anymore. I guess though I can just record those at later dates before I upload the video. Anyways, while I want to do weekly uploads like I said, I still might take 2 weeks off at the end of September or early October to prepare videos for when I'm out of the country, so I don't have to work on that trip. I guess I'll see how much work I can get done without needing time off, and go from there. With the Delusion Factory successfully cleared, it's time for an unfortunate part of Act 3, the anti-Raiden Shogun training. I guess if I have to give it any credit, it has kind of helped me with knowing Raiden's movesets, but I've also done it a dozen times, so it might also be just, you know, muscle memory of fighting her a lot. I'll never say I've gotten good at this game because, well, I haven't, but I guess maybe I've improved. We'll see how long that lasts. Ayaka and Toma continue their work with the Resistance, and after we steal some documents from the Kujo clan, we can convince Kujo-Sara to side with us and confront the clan. This fight is always annoying in these challenges just because it's entirely physical enemies, and the longer the fight goes, the more enemies spawn. Obviously, you only have to defeat the leader in the 3rd round, but when you're being surrounded, it's a little, well, you can see how it went. However, eventually, we survive to see the end. Kokomi may not be a fast challenge, but she has a high survivability, so I guess a win regardless. Now it's time for Kokomi to fight for her people and end the Vision Hunt decree once and for all. While we do that, I will be the first to admit that this video got a little delayed, but that's okay because it gave me this to talk about, and boy do I have opinions. So a couple weekends ago, Midya, Violet, and I took a trip to New York to see the Korean rock band Extraordinary Heroes. We didn't have like VIP or anything, we just had normal general admission, and we had kind of planned to hang towards the back. And that worked perfectly until the show started. The venue itself had a slanted floor so you could see the stage perfectly, as pictured, and so we were super excited. And then as the concert started, a girl moved in front of us and was wearing huge platform heels that made her taller than us even despite the slanted floor. No big deal, it's GA, that happens, and I could still see my favorite member, Ode, over her shoulder. And then she started dancing and headbanging. And it wasn't like nodding her head to the rhythm or shimmying. No, it was like full choreography and metal concert headbanging. Now, I must stress that I am all for having fun at concerts, but you have to have situational awareness. Yes, you paid for that ticket, you should enjoy it, but that does not give you the right to disrupt those around you who also paid the same price you did for the concert. Not to mention, she had a solid 6 feet in front of her of empty space. And honestly, if she stood even a foot or two closer to the stage in that empty space, we would have seen fine, even with her dancing. But no, she was right up against me. I got her hair in my face, elbows in my stomach, the whole 9 yards. My phone was plugged into Violet's portable charger because she was, you know, standing next to me, and the girl got so close that her bag got tangled in the cord. And then she looked at me like it was my fault. Personally, I feel like if I hit someone around me accidentally or got tangled in a person's cord, I would be more mindful of the people around me, but hey. Now, I didn't film her, intentionally at least, because I'm firmly against filming strangers in public, so you'll just have to take my word for it. But I got these videos, and you can see suddenly something blocks my entire view. That was her. And since I have an iPhone Pro, the 5x zoom will go out of focus every time she cuts in front of me, so my videos ended up looking like this. However, during random songs, I got good videos and a good view. Why? Because she randomly sat down to scroll on her phone. Again, in a GA pit. I love concerts, it's probably one of my favorite things to do. But that was probably the worst concert experience I've had in terms of people around me. Luckily, it was made better by Extraordinary Heroes being absolutely 11 out of 10. We all agreed we need to see them in concert again, just barricade next time. Focusing on the challenge, I feel like this was the single boss fight that I was somewhat confident with, since, you know, she's like the only pirate boss in the Archon quests, I think, anyways. But it was still a huge relief to succeed in the battle. Up next, our final battle, the perfect finale to Inazuma. Sangonomiya Kokomi, the leader of the Resistance, battling A for the end of the Vision Hunt decree. Let's begin. Alright, so what are my thoughts on this challenge so far? Despite it being difficult, I really enjoyed it. It was kind of fun trying to chip away at enemies. Back during early Genshin when one-shotting was the meta, I hated that because I like the challenge of a proper battle. I like the satisfaction of chipping away at HP. However, I am definitely concerned about trying to defeat the Narwhal in Fontaine, but, well, we can cross that bridge when we get there. Besides, I love Kokomi. Honestly, she's had a dedicated spot on my team probably longer than anyone. Even when I switched from Child to Wanderer for my main, Kokomi was still with the main spot. I will always need a healer. What can I say? I can't dodge. I definitely think I'll be interested to see how she does against higher level bosses in future nations since we'll need to level up the world, but we won't be able to level up her. I guess worst case scenario, I can just try to get a good build and hope for the best. For future challenges, in terms of future challenge runs, I'm definitely going to be prioritizing not cry characters, but I want to make sure I have most of my past challenges done before I get there. I guess you guys can expect kind of rapid fire challenge part 2s mixed in with other stuff, so that's a little exciting. I guess we'll see. Kokomi is able to single-handedly end the Vision Hunt decree, says RIP to totally not Tepe because we 100% kept him alive, and finished the Inazuma Archon quest. Went better than I expected, all things considered. Now you might be wondering, where's the chasm? Well, I am glad you asked. I didn't film it yet, knowing full well that I did not want to deal with the Abyss Herald a second time in a single video. Maybe I'll release it as a bonus video, maybe I'll put it in part 2, I guess we'll find out. Maybe, like I said, I'll start making part 1 of my challenges go through Sumeru since Nodcry is releasing. Thank you so much to my channel members. I am rapidly running out of space on here, so I should probably learn how credit rolls work on Premiere Pro, and I'm sorry this wasn't a member's first video. Don't worry, I don't anticipate that happening anymore. I just needed this up as soon as it was finished. Oops. Also, thank you again to everyone who has shared fan art. I need to start printing all of this art out and putting it on my wall, if that's okay with you guys, of course. If you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the little bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time!